welcome Donna and Norm Burns to the Oral History Project. We're just so thrilled that you decided that and agreed that you would participate in this interview. And I think what we want to do is get started by, after saying thank you, to each of you maybe talk a little bit about what drew you to German Village in the first place. Donna, do you want to begin with that?
Probably the fact that all of our children went to Ohio State, and our oldest child called one day. She and her two roommates were living in German Village over here in Frankfurt, and she called in tears saying there's a for sale sign in front of our house. This was back in 78, 79. And she said, would Dad consider buying it? And I said, well, I'll talk to him. So we made the people an offer, and they accepted, and the girls got to live in the house for the next couple of years. And then when Jenny graduated, she got married, and Norm and I came down every weekend. I would leave school at 3, get home by 4, get packed, and we would come to Columbus, and we redid that house from top to bottom. We tore out walls. We moved the kitchen into the middle room. It was a shotgun house. And the kitchen was in the back. It was the living room, a middle room that was kind of useless. I think it was supposedly a dining room, maybe, I don't know, but the kitchen was huge. So we just transferred things. We tore out walls and ceilings and everything. We added another bathroom downstairs, and
so that got you started in renovations down in German Village.
That got us started in the renovation. And right after we had it all finished, they, in the meantime, had a baby and called to tell us that they had to sell the house because they were moving to Michigan. And it just broke Norm's heart. I thought he was going to cry. But the neighbor called us shortly after that and said, if you're interested in the house, the one next door to me is for sale. And that's the one we're living in presently.
Yeah, that was 1983.
1983.
Yeah.
And what was German Village like in the late 70s or early 80s?
Well, you know, German Village, the south side was kind of suspect from the post-war era. And when Don and I were students in the early 50s, you know, going to the south side was really a step backwards. And if there was a drawing card in German Village, it certainly was Diebel's, and Diebel's was a destination area when our kids were in school. But the South End, really, until, as we all know, Frank Fetch made the big move in 1960 and said, "Hey, let's save some of this." And of course, it metastasized then into what it is today. But the changes that we've seen with the renovation that's occurred, we're getting more mega homes, more mansions, so to speak. When you look at a house or two on Beck Street, oh, phenomenal, beautiful houses, but they're not the cottages that the immigrants built. And then you look at the houses around Schiller Park. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've noticed, I'm sure Donna has noticed too. The houses, they don't build cottages in German Village anymore. If there's any new construction, it's mega. And they have, in many instances, joined small cottages and everything. So that's one of the changes I've seen, is with the homes.
May I interrupt
Yes,
a
go
minute?
ahead,
When
please.
we first moved in here, when we first bought this property, the property across the street was the German Village Meeting House. And it was just a single brick building. And it's still there, but it has become a part of a mansion that extends for half a block down. And it's because we used to have volleyball games in the middle of the street here on weekends. Everybody would bring some food, and we'd have a picnic, and the kids would all be here, and Norm and I would be here with the rest of them, and we would have the police would block off both ends of the street, and we'd put a net across the telephone poles right here in front of the house and play volleyball.
So it was a kind of a community center. You mentioned that the German Village Society used to be over on the corner there.
Yeah.
When we think about what the German Village Meeting House looks like now, how would you compare what the meeting house was like then? What were the activities that went on there?
There weren't a whole lot of activities.
Well,
They had some, but it was just one great big room
very Spartan. And of course,
and a big parking
to
lot.
mention a name, and God love her, was Shirley Keents. Shirley was on board most of the time when we would go over and say hello. But it was just that small segment, and there was this whole expanse here was parking. And I think, as I might have told you earlier, Mary, we'd park across the street, and periodically Fred Holdridge would come over and knock on the door. Now this was 1983, 84, and say, "Would you move your car? We're going to have a meeting." Well, the German Village Society was not our number one, was not paramount in our mind at the time, because we were, the kids, our daughter was living in the house then after 83 when we remodeled. But then I think Tom Gross bought the meeting house, and I think that was the initial payment that enabled the German Village Society to relocate and redo what today is our beautiful meeting house, was selling this property to Tom Gross.
Because he bought the parking lot and
Yeah.
all the land that went with it, the whole block.
And so you mentioned that you might not have been very involved with the German Village Society, at least in the meeting house in those years. Can you talk a little bit about how you were involved in the community at large in the early years and as you progressed?
Well,
You go.
as I told you and told John, I retired in 89. Donna retired in 91. I was with the university part-time in admissions, and when I would come down in 89, 90, our house here was leased. So I'd stay with our youngest daughter, Marty, who lived on Deschler. She and her husband lived just outside the village. So I'd stay with them. And we, of course, then when we decided in 91 that this was going to be utopia, then we came down permanently. But I got involved. I think I'll have to give a wonderful individual by the name of Dick Schwartzmiller. Does that mean anything to you, John?
John.
Yeah, he's retired now, living in Florida. And at any rate, Dick got me involved with Garden Club, and for a number of years, when Dick left and relocated in Florida, then I got started with Garden Club and I ran the flower sale, which originally was at Schiller Park, and then we moved it over here. But then I got involved at St. Mary's. Father Hunsinger had married both our daughters, so Father Ralph was pretty special. And when Father Ralph left, and Father Watson came on board, so that was stimulus to get involved with St. Mary's. Plus, Legal Thurn was in charge of bingo at St. Mary's, so I got involved that way. And then through Dick Schwartzmiller again, I started volunteering at the meeting house in '92, so I've been I've been a volunteer at the Visitor Center since '92, so that's what 20 years.
20 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. So that, in a nutshell, was a little bit of a stimulus to my getting started with activities in the village. And I don't know, today I guess I've tapered off a little bit, maybe because of age, or I don't know, but I'm not quite as active today because I feel it's the younger people, hopefully, that are like John,
We can get them
that
involved.
are doing the majority of volunteer work.
Can you talk a little bit about how in those 20 years being a volunteer at the Meeting House has changed for you?
Of course, we've gone through a number of directors, and of course, Catherine Moore, we all know. Catherine, just a tremendous leader, so to speak. And before Catherine, Michelle. Can either of you help me? Michelle preceded Catherine, and Catherine came on board, what are we going to say, 10 years ago maybe? Was Catherine head of the German Village Society then?
She was head for 13 years.
13 years, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to remember now. We relocated in at 533? 580, what's our, 535?
588. isn't it?
588, yeah.
Yeah.
The phone number is 221-8888. I can remember that. But see, before that time, really, we didn't have a director of the German Village Society as such. Fred Holdridge, Fred and Howard, along with Shirley Keats, certainly, and several others. I won't go into great detail with the other movers and shakers. But when we relocated, and then we had much more space, it was much more elaborate, then I think we started thinking about, well, we're going to need administration other than Fred and Howard. And we moved into the new meeting house when in the late 80s. It was before we came back permanently, so I'm going to say we moved into the present meeting house in 87, 88. Mary, do you recall, or John?
Into the present meeting house?
Yeah.
It seems like it was about 91.
Was it 90? Was it that late?
It could have been.
I think it might have been.
Maybe so. Okay. All right. Well, then of course we started taking on. Then we hired our first HPO. Can't think of her name either. I remember her. But we started accumulating a little bit of administration.
And so the role of a volunteer had changed then?
Oh yes, as I said, Shirley Keats, Shirley and a couple of her lady friends, they were the nucleus of our embryonic administration. Yeah.
And how about you, Donna? What activities?
Well, when I first started, so that I could get to meet people, I decided I'd better get involved with some of the organizations here, and one of the first ones that I really got involved with was the landscape Streetscape Committee. And the Streetscape Committee consisted of Fred Holdridge and Phil Keats and, oh goodness, I don't even remember some of the other people. There was a gal that lived here that was very involved before she moved here with landscaping someplace in the south, and I'm not sure she even lives here anymore. But anyway, it was the idea of putting up new street signs, redoing 3rd Street. And it was on 3rd Street when they said they were going to repave it and not put bricks down. Fred is the one who dug a hole out in front of the, House Frau Haven. Dug a hole out in front of the House Frau Haven in the middle of the street and planted a tree there so that the city wouldn't come and tear everything apart. And because they were going to blacktop everything, and which of course they have done, but we begged them to just put brick along the crosswalks, at all the crosswalks, if they would just put brick there. And maybe I realize that the homeowners are responsible for their sidewalks, but it would be nice, and it was one of our dreams, that we would have brick close to the street, and then if they wanted to pave with concrete, they could do so the rest of the sidewalk, but at least save the brick along the edge of the street. But it was too costly.
Quite a campaign.
Oh, it was a campaign. We worked so hard, and then the city kind of dropped us. They were going to give us, I can't tell you, I'd have to go back over the records, how many thousands, not millions of dollars, but thousands of dollars. And we were going to, this was before they were thinking about, but had not done 70-71. And they were going to put a top over High Street, the way they have done at the other end of High Street, over 670. They were going to put buildings over that, the bridge and so forth. And that was the idea. And we were hoping that they would just clean up the corner across from Katzinger's, that, you know, we begged them just to come over and mow it once in a while, because the weeds would grow so high you couldn't see across the street. And we said, at least plant something in there, some cotoneaster, some flowers, something. Well, they did on the corner on 4th Street, but they never bothered with anything on 3rd Street because they knew that eventually that was all going to be torn out. Well, I don't think it's going to be torn out. The way 70-71 has come in, I don't think they're going to tear it out.
And about what year was it that you were involved in trying to get the first Streetscape Committee going?
Oh, gosh, Mary, I've probably got records of that upstairs someplace, but it had to be in the middle 90s, late middle 90s, something like that, 95, 96, maybe even later than that. And we had a wonderful art group going, and again, Phil Keats was involved in that because he was quite a sculptor, I think, and Byron Kahn was very involved in it. And I wish I could think of some of the other names of the people who were involved in this group. And we used to have the art shows, and I think it was Byron who was the one who started the house and garden tour painting of the houses.
The watercolor?
The watercolor. And it was initially the German Village group. We were painting, all the artists from our German Village group were painting there, and then they expanded to the Central Ohio Watercolor Society here in Columbus, because there weren't enough artists left in the village to do this. So it was
talking about how things have really evolved in the time that you've been here. And then two names that keep coming up for both of you are Shirley Keats and Phil Keats. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about their influence in German Village, as you recall it?
I don't know that I can say a whole lot, except that they were so involved, and Phil was always at the meetings. He was always ready to go with everything. And as far as getting things actually done, we would present our ideas to the board. I probably still have some of those papers someplace. But I don't know that I was involved that much with Shirley. Shirley was more involved with the garden club and the meeting house itself, where I got involved really with the Streetscape Committee and trying to get that going. And fortunately, somebody else, it kind of fell apart when the city said, no, we're not going to give you the money, and it kind of fell apart. And then resurrected again in the past few years, so that we do have a group now that's, I think, very actively trying to have new street signs and trying to do things with 3rd Street. And it was 3rd Street that we were concerned about, because this is the major thoroughfare in German Village.
Mary, to elaborate a little bit more on the Keents, and then we'll leave them go, so, because there are other people in the village certainly that are contributors. But Phil Keents, the family was also involved in construction. Phil Keents was a carpenter, bricklayer, cement. He and his son and several others were involved in construction. But if Phil Keents had a specialty, and we attended one of his so-called seminars, he was a whiz, so to speak, and of historic significance as far as Indian artifacts are concerned. He had collected all the arrows and all the paraphernalia that our early settlers utilized. So Phil was important that way, in addition to just his other volunteer activities.
And Shirley, you mentioned, pretty much ran
Yeah.
the society.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So a couple other names that you mentioned that sounded influential for you were Leo Thurn and then the role of St. Mary's Church. Do you want to elaborate on those a little bit?
Well, of course, St. Mary's Church, as I tell our visitors at the meeting house, is the second oldest Catholic church in the diocese. And if and when it's open, I tell our visitors, regardless of your religious affiliation, you know, that old cliche, well, we're all headed the same way, same path. But I said, you know, even St. Mary's, beautiful artwork, constructed by the Germans back 1865, maybe 1863, number 2 church in the diocese. Beautiful frescoes, glass windows of consequence, certainly. A prayer wall, it's gorgeous, beautiful. A baptismal fount that is the original, back 1860, 1865, when the church first came about. That baptismal fountain that we're using today for baptism is the same one. And the pulpit and the communion railing and everything. So the church really is a destination. It is very popular for weddings. We have them come from all over Central Ohio. They want to get married at beautiful St. Mary's, because it's not like the modern churches, which are more like a gymnasium almost. So St. Mary's and Father Hunsinger, a good German name, Father Hunsinger, having married both our daughters, also was an important part in our lives as far as coming back to St. Mary's. And then when Father Watson came along, and then you've got one of the Thurns, which is a historic name in historic German Village, the Thurn family. Leo Thurn, at age probably close to 80, Leo still runs the bingo operation, which unfortunately is not what it used to be. Our bingo money, which runs St. Mary's School, is dwindling, and that's another story. But with Leo Thurn at St. Mary's, and a quick recollection I have of the rectory, which is a beautiful building and was on the House and Garden tour this past year. But up until about maybe 10 years ago, during the summer months, they would haul out all of these green awnings. And can you imagine the rectory being encompassed in green awnings? And they hung these awnings over all the windows. But then it got to be too much of a chore financially and otherwise. So they no longer hang the awnings during the summer months. But yeah.
But I remember when our older daughter got married, we asked Father Hunsinger if she might have one of her wedding pictures taken on the beautiful stairway that they have inside the rectory. And he was kind of aghast. Nobody had ever asked for anything like that before, and they'd never done anything like that. And anyway, he did allow her to have her wedding picture taken on the stairway, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm glad we have it. So I don't know if that has continued or not. So we may be the only ones.
I think when we met before, you talked about how St. Mary's had really gone through a revitalization along with the rest of the village. And can you recall about when that was?
Well, St. Mary's was in disrepair for many, many years. The paint was chipping, and trying to amass enough of a purse to promote the restoration was a real challenge. So they went to the diocese for additional monies and everything. So lo and behold, it was just in time for Marty's wedding.
For our youngest
the reconstruction was finally completed. And of course, another name that certainly goes back in the history of German Village is Mary Louise Hendricks. Mary Louise was a volunteer at the meeting house for a number of years, and she was on the committee for the restoration of St. Mary's. And of course, she took pride in the fact that her nephew was the number 2. Monsignor Hendricks was number 2 to the bishop. See, but at any rate, Mary Louise Hendricks was one of the components of the remodeling committee. And of course, I served with Mary Louise as a volunteer at the visitor center, so I would get a recapitulation of all that went on in an effort to do what they had to do to make beautiful St. Mary's what it is today. So it was 5, 6, 7 years in the making, and finally they had enough of a base to work from. But unfortunately, the base was not enough, and St. Mary's has some severe financial problems, and the diocese is assisting, but how they're going to alleviate their financial stress it's a major question. But I think St. Mary's, if you look at the crown jewels in German Village, you've got Schiller Park, you've got St. Mary's, and thanks to people like Jerry Glick, now we've got Frank Vetch Park coming along. So these are outstanding components to what's an outstanding neighborhood.
Donna, I know that you're an artist and that you have your own studio here in German Village. And I just wonder, you talked a little bit before about how you had, a lot of your involvement had to do with the arts and the art community flowing over into the streetscape and the landscape. But I wonder what it's been like for you to have your own studio here and to be a member of the business community in German Village.
Well, I have rejoined the business community. I was in the initial stages of the startup of the business community, and then I was one of the few who was a one-man operation, and it got a little expensive for me. but I have rejoined, and now they have the internet. I'm hoping that eventually I can get on the internet. We were instrumental in starting the Mother May I in the spring, just before Mother's Day.
And what's the Mother May I?
It's the idea is just before Mother's Day, the Saturday before Mother's Day, or the Sunday. I'm not real sure anymore which day it is.
I think it's Sunday with Mother's Day. You take your mother
You
out.
take your mother out for lunch or dinner, but you bring her down to the village and you shop with her, and in all the little shops try to stay open. Make sure they're open on Sunday so that they can come, and they decorate their shops a little bit more, put more flowers out and baskets and things like that. And then the other, of course, our big celebration is, or a big push towards the village, is the December lights.
Village lights.
Christmas village lights, when we all have the luminaria out. Last year we were rained out, so no lights. But hopefully again this year it will be big time, and it's on December 2nd. It runs on a Sunday from 6 to 10. And all the studios and all the shops are open, and the studios and shops all donate an item, and we have 2 gift baskets that are given away, and people will draw or sign their names and drop them in a box at each of the businesses in the village. And then the names are drawn, and whoever gets a big basket with goodies from every business in the community, I think. So it's quite nice, and we're usually very, very crowded. And I was fortunate enough a couple years ago to have John Ruthven as my guest artist. John came up from Cincinnati, and we were packed to the gills with people who are collectors of his art, and I'm planning to have some of his prints this year, and I'm also including my originals and Fran Mangino's prints. So it will be it's a bit of a advertising gimmick to bring people into the village, and hopefully the weather will be good. We provide sleigh rides usually, and there are carolers that are down at Helen Winnemore's, and the people can ride through the village. If there's snow, we have the horses and the sleighs, and hopefully there won't be rain this year.
So, you mentioned that you were involved with the start of the business community, the German Village Business Group.
Yes.
Can you remember about when that was?
It had to be maybe, how long have I had the studio? 8 years?
10 years.
10 years.
11 years.
It was probably about 8 years ago then that this got started. Maybe a year or two longer. But the idea was to try to get everybody involved, and at first there were just maybe 10 or 12 of us, and then from then on it metastasized, and we have all of the businesses, from real estate businesses to you name it, and I think just about every business in the community is involved. And they're the ones that promote Christmas lights and Mother May I. These are their 2 big promotions. So.
Norm, you had something that you were...
Oh, my notes here. At one time, well, let me kind of rephrase this a little bit. Among the jewels also that I mentioned in German Village has to be Schmidt's. We have some fine restaurants, the Barcelona, G. Michael's. Although the Claremont is not part of German Village, the Claremont now, the demise of the Claremont was a blow to the village also. But at any rate, at one time, one of the destinations, certainly, in German Village was the engine house. And the engine house has been history now for 15 years, whatever. But in the basement of the engine house was a little intimate gathering area done in a very rustic motif called the Spot. Now, if you, back then, if you were to say, well, where are we going to go for happy hour? Where do the villagers go? Where do you people in the village, where do you eat? Well, we eat here and here and here. But the Spot was a gathering. And it was just a lot of fun, wonderful. And one of the positive aspects of the Spot was the fact that upstairs, of course, was the engine house. One of the finer restaurants, certainly in the village. But the Spot would serve about the same menu at a reduced cost. Oh. So it was all, well, we're going to go to the engine house underneath because we're going to save a few dollars. Because one of the things that drew you to the engine house for a birthday especially was the fact that the pole, the fireman's pole. Well, if it was your birthday, they'd ring the bell, the fireman's bell, and the waiter was trained to hang on to the pole from upstairs with one hand and carry the birthday cake with the other. See, so there you are. Here comes the birthday cake, and you hope he doesn't drop it or fall off the pole. So that was one of the happenings at the engine house. But the spot, and I think it was Fred and Howard's. It was under their guise that the Spot became the place to go for happy hour throughout the village. If you were a villager and wanted to go to an intimate area, inexpensive, you go to the Spot. The Spot today, of course, is long gone, as is the engine house.
Right, but the engine house you're referring to at the corner of 4th and Thurman would be the location.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that.
Yeah. And of course, down the street you have the Thurman Cafe and the Country Kitchen. And these are jam-packed all the time. It seems like the Country Kitchen, especially on Sundays, there's the waiting line. It goes around the corner for people trying to get in.
But that's where you go for breakfast.
That's where you go for breakfast. And the Thurman Cafe has grown and grown to be one of the favorite hamburger spots in Columbus.
About like that.
So, yeah.
So you have a lot of fond memories of different places.
Married too many.
Yeah,
that's right.
Never too many fond memories.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, I remember the restaurant that was over on High Street.
Yeah, I wrote it.
What was the name of it?
The Village Junction.
The Village Junction, and that was filled with Byron Kahn's paintings. And of course, Byron's paintings are all over at
They're in the meeting house.
They're in the meeting house and at Schmidt's. But Byron was so instrumental in getting all of the community, the art community together. And he lived just 2 houses. I mean, it's the Fudge House, and Byron Kahn's studio was right next door. He lived upstairs on 5th.
5th Street, I'm sorry.
5th Street, and Keats lived on the corner, and of course that was, he and Phil were good buddies, and
Schmidt's was there.
And Schmidt's was there, and oh yes, absolutely. So these people were very instrumental in getting a lot of the organization started. Mm-hmm. And since then they have, passed down the line, but and some of them have died out. We've tried to start. Ryan Orweiler started a new art group. This is probably the third or fourth that he started in the village, and I just got an email from him saying that he can no longer participate, that unless somebody else is willing to step up and take over, that this too will disband. So it's hard.
So you've seen a lot of changes over the years. What do you consider being some of the biggest changes that you see in German Village today as compared to 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I think I mentioned the mega construction that's going on, Mary. The elaborate houses. You look at Dutch Broadway, which is Deschler. It's Dutch Broadway. Some of the elaborate homes there. A couple of the doctors have built new homes there, and some of the new construction that's going on Beck Street. Without mentioning a whole lot of names, but there's some pretty elaborate construction here and here and here. So as I circumvent the village and look around at what was and what is, now, down here in the corner, the elaborate home that stretches the whole from 3rd Street to Columbus Street, the banker, John Wolf, is that Wolf's?
No.
Well, Bank One, Tom Hoagland.
Tom Hoagland lived
yeah.
there, but the man who built it was with Swan Cleaners.
The Jelpies had Swan Cleaners.
Yeah.
But, Mary, and of course the businesses, a few are still, Helen Whittemore's is still in place, but the small boutiques, the small businesses have come and gone. And as I tell our visitors when they come to the meeting house, when we talk about places to go and things to do, the Book Loft, Golden Hobby Shop for two if they want, and Katharina's, places to promenade. I said, if you're so moved, I said, spend a few dollars so we can keep these businesses going, because they come and go. And we can go down 3rd Street, and the Nutcracker that was across the street from Pistachios, which at one time was Thurn's Bakery and a little restaurant. Of course, Katzinger's is still vibrant, but as you go around the village, Mary, you find businesses that are no longer. Then a new business comes in. Winans on the corner of Whittier and 3rd Street. Beautiful chocolate and drink.
And you hope
establishment.
that's going to, it'll
hope they make
stay.
it. With their home bases in Piqua, they've got, I don't know, Winans has 6 or 8, and they chose to open up 2 years ago maybe, and the businesses there have come and gone over the years. There was a vitamin store there, and then there was a antique shop.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think, Mary, in a nutshell, you see businesses come and go, and you keep your fingers crossed. Hey, they're going to make it. The Red Stable right across from Schmidt's is about to do something. They're going to do something, but it's been closed now for a year or more.
Well, the young boys that bought Keynes's house are going to open a business there. And when you were mentioning Katzinger's, just down the street south of Katzinger's, there used to be an antique shop there, and then there was a fabric store that went in after the lady sold. Well, I think she died, but she always had, at Easter, she always had these wonderful hats in her window. And then it was sold, what was the name of it? Twig? Twig went in, and I noticed that they have moved out to near New Albany in that area, and it's just a shame to see those windows empty. Something needs to go in there that's going to be a little more lasting, but the thing is, our visitors who come into the village have got to realize that we don't have any nickel-dime stores in the village, and that if they want to buy something, they're going to have to spend more than $5 probably to get anything.
But I think, Mary, when I look at what's happened at Schiller Park, thanks to a nucleus of people involved there, the Huntington Gardens has been maintained and is more elaborate today, and what they recently did with Schiller's statue is a positive. And of course, look at what's going on at Frank Fetch Park. So as I look around the village, I see development that certainly is positive. Are we seeing an influx of younger folks? Maybe so. Are families coming into the village? Maybe not so much. Our school system maybe is a little bit lacking, so if they're sending their kids to school here might not be their first choice. But I think we're getting a smattering of youth, so to speak. Getting these people involved, I think, is another challenge. Mm-hmm. They're working maybe, or trying to get them to join the society. Sometimes that's a challenge too. And the renters, what percent of German Village is rented? Do the renters join the society? Not with great frequency. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge.
So you're talking about challenges for the future, how to keep it vibrant.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could each address how your overall experience has been living in German Village.
Well, I have really liked it, though I have felt, and this is my own fault, I've felt a little isolated, even though I have tried to be a part of the village group. I didn't want to be involved in the organizations that Norm was involved in. I felt this is his thing, let him do it, I will do my thing. And so when the Streetscape Committee came up, that was something that I could do, that Norm wasn't involved in. I didn't want to join Garden Club or become a part of working at the meeting house or anything like that. I have my studio, and as much as I try to get down there, it's been a real chore this year to even open it because we've been gone so much. But it's I'm just not, just the fact that I'm now in a bridge group. As much as I struggle with my bridge, because at my age I'm still playing the old-fashioned way, and everybody's playing all the new techniques, and I've got to catch up with them some way, and it's been difficult, but it's brought in a whole new group of friends that I have missed. I feel that I've not had friendships in the village that I could have had. And especially after, with Wendy gone next door when she moved out, and we have Yvonne down on the corner, and she's been priceless. So that's been great.
And how about for you, Norm? How's your overall experience been here?
I can promenade from the village down to Broad High in a half hour, 45 minutes. And if I should decide to, there's something on campus that I should be a part of, I can get to campus in 15 or 20 minutes. As far as eating out is concerned, if and when we do eat out, I would venture to say 75–85% of the time we're going to stay here in the neighborhood because we've got a nucleus of fine restaurants. So they're accessible, park, in many instances, or grocery store, drugstore a little bit further away. What I do miss in the village is like maybe a Lowe's or Home Depot, so I have to venture out. But I think life in the village is appealing in that it's a walkable neighborhood. It's a walkable neighborhood, and I can putter around in my garden. I have no grass to cut, so I can do a little bit of gardening. Fortunately, when Donna permits, I can go to her studio, putter around at her studio. We have the little cottage that is ours also right next door, so I can go down, I paint the white picket fence every year for something to do. But I think life in the village, Mary, if there is a challenge as far as mobility is concerned, it's riding a bicycle. It's hard to ride a bicycle unless I don't want everybody to know about using the Menacor parking lot, but I can go over the Menacor.
You could.
Just keep going around in a circle in the Menacor parking lot for a half hour. Then put my bicycle in escrow and walk over to Thurns on High Street and have it's happy hour, so I get a glass of beer for $1.
And I fell off my bike after the 4th time falling on the bricks. I took it over to my daughter's house out in Arlington so that it's stored in her garage, and if I want to ride, I go out there.
So, well, is there anything, I think we're coming to the end of
Well,
our
an hour,
time.
Mary, I promised you. I wouldn't keep going. I promised John an hour. Yeah, we can do it at another time. So that, there are so many things we could talk about, and I think.
But give somebody else a chance.
Yeah.
There are other people who will be involved in this
I think
program.
I've been fortunate in my experiences as a volunteer at the Meeting House. I have worked with the likes of Mary Louise Hendricks, long gone, Dick Schwartzmiller, Fred, even Fred Holdridge. He was kind of an impediment at times, so to speak. I use that term with
Great love.
yeah, and certainly now with Pat Grimault, these are people who were components of the village for many years back, and we could talk about what was, and I learned from them. So I find since 1992, our life in the village has been pretty fulfilling. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Donna?
No, I think Norm has pretty well covered everything. I think I told you I quit cooking. I don't know that has anything to do with it, but Norm is learning how to cook now and prepares most of the meals. So that's kind of nice.
Sounds like a pretty good plan.
Mary, I think we're fortunate that we have people like you, people like John. We have such a great nucleus of volunteers.
That's true.
Old cliche, I can write a check for X number of dollars, a moderate check for X number of dollars. But if you have, as an individual, instead of writing the check, will give your time, because what's our most valuable asset in life is time. So that we have, I think, are fortunate to have the nucleus of volunteers that we have. And every once in a while there's a new name that appears. And I'm saying to my dear friend Pat Grimault, Pat, do you know so-and-so? No, I don't think so. I said, well, they're heading this operation or this committee or this committee. So I think we're fortunate that way, Mary, that we are seeing some additional activity as far as giving of time.
Well, speaking of time, I want to thank you for your time, for both of you, to participate in this project. And
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I hope it goes well.
Yeah,